When we talk about the global water crisis, the first thing that probably comes to mind is drought, right? Dried up rivers, cracked earth. But what if I told you the real problem isn't a lack of water, but a lack of good ideas and solid policy? Let's dive into that, because the answer, well, it might just change how you see the entire issue. First things first, we have to understand just how high the stakes are. Let this number sink in for a second. 1.8 million. That's how many children die every single year from diseases they get from unsafe water. These are completely preventable deaths. In fact, it makes unclean water the second biggest killer of children on the entire planet. So yeah, the urgency here is absolutely off the charts.
So, this brings us to the big question we're exploring. Is this whole tragedy happening just because there isn't enough water to go around? A crisis of scarcity? Or is it something else? Is it a crisis of management? A direct result of poverty, inequality, and just plain broken policies? To get to the bottom of that, we really need to trace the roots of this crisis. And what you're going to see is that it's so much more than just natural limits. It's about human systems, our economies, our power structures, and ultimately the choices we make. Okay, let's break down the problem a bit. You've got over 1 billion people denied the right to clean water. You've got 2.6 billion without proper sanitation. But here's the absolute key. The research shows these numbers aren't inevitable. They're often the direct result of bad policies that make a tough situation so much worse. So, if these separate, fragmented policies are the problem, what's the solution? Well, this is where a completely different way of thinking comes into play. It's called Integrated Water Resources Management, or IWRM for short. Think of it as a whole new playbook for managing water. So what exactly is IWRM? Well, at its heart, it's a really simple but powerful idea. It says you can't have one government department handling drinking water, another one handling irrigation for farms, and a third one worrying about the environment. That just doesn't work. You've got to look at the whole picture, the water, the land, the people, all at once, to make sure the outcomes are fair for everyone and built to last. And this whole philosophy is built on 4 core principles that were laid out back in 1992. First, water is finite. There's only so much of it. Second, management has to be participatory. That means everyone, from local users to top-level planners, gets a seat at the table. Third, and this one is so important, you have to recognize the central role that women play. And finally, number 4, water has economic value, and treating it like an economic good is key to using it wisely. Now, keep these 4 principles in your back pocket, because we're going to use them as our scorecard.
All right, so theory is great, but let's put it to the test. We're going to look at a real-world case study, comparing 2 developing nations that are facing really similar challenges, Bangladesh and Cameroon. This is where you can really see the incredible power of policy in action.
Now, if you just look at the stats from back in 2009, these 2 countries seem almost identical. On the UN's Human Development Index, they're ranked right near each other, way down the list. Both were officially classified as least developing countries, so you'd probably expect them to have pretty similar problems with water, wouldn't you? Well, the reality could not be more different. Let's start with Cameroon. Get this, a staggering 42% of the population doesn't have access to clean, safe drinking water. And I want to be clear, this isn't because Cameroon is some arid desert. It has plenty of fresh water. The problem is all about poor management and high costs that literally put water out of reach for millions of people. And then you have Bangladesh. By 2005, it had achieved an incredible 97% water supply coverage for its people. 97%. It's an achievement that's now seen as a global best practice. So you have 2 countries with similar development profiles, but just wildly different results. The big question is, why? The answer, it turns out, is hiding in plain sight in their national water policies. So now we're going to have a little policy showdown. We'll use those 4 IWRM principles as our measuring stick and see exactly how each country's approach stacks up. Okay, let's start with the first 2 principles. Number 1, recognizing water is finite. Both countries get it. But notice how Bangladesh's policy is way more comprehensive. It links water directly to development and the environment. But the huge difference is in principle 2, participation. Cameroon's policy is very top-down. It gives a nod to local authorities, but it doesn't see regular people as having rights.
Bangladesh, a completely different story. Their policy explicitly demands that all stakeholders are involved.
And this quote from one of Bangladesh's own policy papers just says it all. The ultimate success depends on the people's acceptance and ownership of each project. For them, success isn't about some government mandate, it's about whether the community buys in and feels like they own it. That's a bottom-up approach right there.
The difference gets even more stark when you look at the last two principles. The role of women, Cameroon's policy, total silence. Bangladesh, on the other hand, explicitly recognizes women as the main providers of water and as key players. And what about economic value? Again, Cameroon is kind of vague, but Bangladesh is crystal clear. Users have to pay a price that reflects the true cost. That's what ensures the system can sustain itself and encourages people not to waste water. It's night and day.
So let's pull all of this together. This tale of two countries with two profoundly different approaches, what does it really teach us about how to solve the global water crisis? Here's the bottom line. What the success of Bangladesh and the struggles of Cameroon show us is a simple but powerful truth. The water crisis is very often a crisis of governance. It's about policy and management choices, not just how much rain you get. A good, holistic policy can be absolutely transformative. So, what's the path forward from here? Well, this analysis points to some pretty clear steps. Countries need to share what works. We've got to decentralize management and put power back in the hands of local communities. And most importantly, we have to make sure water is available to the poor and that women have a real, powerful role in managing it. These aren't just nice ideas. These are proven, effective strategies. And all of this leaves us with one last big provocative question. If we know that these kinds of integrated, participatory policies, like the ones that worked so well in Bangladesh, are the key, then what's really stopping more countries from turning the page? What are the political and social roadblocks that are keeping them from solving their water crisis from the inside out?